She didn't leave because your conversations grew a little quieter, or because your texts didn't carry the same charm they once did. She didn't walk away because you forgot the scent of her favorite candle, or because your car didn't shine like the ones in the commercials. Her exit wasn't because of some surface-level failing. No matter how many times your mind replays tiny, seemingly critical moments. The truth, the deeply hidden truth that no one tells you in the chaos that follows a breakup, is this: she had already begun to pack pieces of herself long before she ever met you. Her bags were halves, yipped before your first date. And that was never yours to stop, never yours to carry, but it doesn't end there. The real tragedy is what happens next. The silence, the internal interrogation, the long and agonizing self-examination. Because after she's gone, you sit alone with questions that spiral in circles. You start to believe that her departure was a rejection of your essence, a mark against your character. But in reality, you were simply in the path of a woman who had not yet made peace with herself. You became the casualty of a war that had nothing to do with you. She was her own battlefield, her heart caught in the crossfire of past trauma and unhealed wounds. You weren't rejected, not in the way it feels late at night when the emptiness starts to roar. You were her refuge, her breath of calm in a life addicted to chaos. And sometimes that's precisely what terrifies someone who only knows how to live within the storm. You see, stillness can be terrifying to someone who has always survived through noise. The gentleness you brought, the stability, the safety, it was unfamiliar to her. She had learned to equate love with high intensity, with sharp words and emotional spikes. So when you came along offering peace, she didn't know where to file that. It didn't feel like home to her. It felt like an illusion, because for someone who has only known love through pain, calmness starts to resemble danger. And so, without any incident, without any betrayal, she left. Not because you failed her, but because you didn't. You didn't give her something to fear. You didn't hurt her, and ironically, that was what scared her the most. She had grown comfortable with storms, so clear skies made her uneasy. And that's what you don't see in the moment when she closes the door behind her. You think if only you were a little different, if you had laughed louder or spoken softer or loved harder, maybe she would have stayed. But Stoicism teaches us that we are not the answer to someone else's unresolved past. You're not the bandage for wounds she refuses to treat. You're not the therapist for pain she never admits. You're not the punishment for the sins of another man. What you are, what you were, is a mirror, and when she looked into you, she saw parts of herself she couldn't bear to face. You didn't just give her affection, you gave her presence, not temporary, performative presence, but deep, quiet, honest presence. You were fully there, asking nothing but offering everything, and that frightened her more than any absence ever could. Because presence requires vulnerability. It says, I see you, all of you. And if a woman isn't ready to be seen, if she's still hiding parts of herself, she'll run. But she won't tell you the truth when she leaves. She'll sugarcoat the exit. She'll say it's not working, or that she needs space, or that you deserve someone better, as though she's doing you a kindness while pulling your world apart. But the truth, the one that sits under all those half-hearted words, is that she didn't know how to receive the love she kept asking for. It was easier to walk away than to stay and learn how to accept something that didn't hurt. And so you sit there, fingers hovering over your phone, crafting messages you never send, and somewhere inside, you still believe her leaving was your fault. But it wasn't. You were consistent. You were tender. You asked questions. You listened. You weren't perfect, far from it, but you were sincere. She didn't leave because you lacked something. She left because you had something she couldn't match: emotional depth. And that's the wound most men carry for far too long. We internalize heartbreak as evidence of our inadequacy, as if being left means we were unworthy. But her eggs, it doesn't reflect your value. It only reveals her unreadiness. I remember standing in a bookstore weeks after she disappeared from my life, touching covers of novels she loved, inhaling pages that still carried a trace of her, and smiling, not because the pain had vanished, but because I finally understood. She didn't leave for someone better. She left because I was too still, too certain, too rooted for someone who only knew how to run. Have you ever loved someone who couldn't love themselves? It's like trying to hold water in your hands. They're there, but never really. Present, but unreachable. Loving someone who doubts their own worth is exhausting, because just when you think they're about to settle in your embrace, they vanish again. That's why Stoicism matters. It teaches us how to love without losing our core. It shows us how to offer freely without begging, to remain whole even when others splinter. A Stoic man does not chase after someone who needs distance. He remains rooted, he witnesses, and then he walks back to himself, not shattered, not cold, but clear. Love doesn't always end with a betrayal or a villain. Sometimes it ends because two people are walking through the same fire at completely different speeds. She wasn't ready to stop fighting, and you had already laid down your sword because you had learned that real love isn't a battlefield. It's peace, and she wasn't ready for peace. That's okay. Some people never are. But the woman who is meant to stand beside you, she won't be afraid of your quiet. She'll find refuge in it. She won't see your calm as a sign of passivity, but as the strength she never knew she needed. She won't pull away when your eyes see too deep. She'll stay, she'll lean in, she'll recognize that she is finally home. So if she leaves, let her chase the storm if that's where she finds comfort. But don't follow. You were never meant to unravel yourself just to make someone else feel whole. You're not obligated to burn just to keep someone warm. And you certainly are not required to harden your heart every time someone fails to understand the depth of your love. Her leaving was never your downfall. It was her fear in full bloom. And you did the bravest thing a man can do. You remained soft in a world that worships hardness. So mourn her, miss her, remember her if you must. But then let her go, not with bitterness, but with grace. Because someday you will meet a woman who sees your stillness as a harbor, not a threat. A woman who says, I've known chaos, I've danced with it, but with you I finally feel quiet. And in that moment it will all make sense. The others weren't wrong. They were just not ready. So stay soft, stay present, stay grounded, not for them, but for you. Because real love was never something that required a chase. And maybe, just maybe, it was never about you becoming someone else to make her stay. It was about you remembering who you were before she walked in, before your values started to feel like it lived in her hands. That's the deception heartbreak brings. It whispers that if you were only more charming, more successful, more spontaneous, more whatever, then maybe she'd have stayed longer, loved harder, smiled wider. But that's the lie. The truth is she didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because she didn't know how to let herself be enough beside someone who already was. Your consistency, your calm, your emotional openness. It didn't threaten her like anger or silence would. No, it revealed what she wasn't ready to face in herself. You weren't playing a game, you weren't pretending, you were showing up fully, and that's rare. That's unnerving to someone who's only ever loved with half a heart, one foot out the door, just in case it all fell apart. You didn't fall apart. You stood firm, and sometimes that quiet strength sends people running faster than any flaw ever could. She couldn't mirror your depth because she hadn't learned how to dive into her own. That's something men need to understand in a world that tells them to chase, to fix, to fight for love that keeps running. You were not meant to chase down someone who's sprinting from themselves. Your worth isn't defined by your ability to convince someone to stay. It's found in how you hold yourself together when they leave. And yes, the nights will be heavy. You'll miss the warmth beside you, the sound of her laugh, the weight of her head on your shoulder after a long day. But none of those things change the truth. You didn't lose her. She lost you. She lost someone who was ready, who showed up, who stood still in a world spinning too fast. And that loss is not yours to grieve forever. You can remember her. You can honor what you had. But do not let her departure become the lens through which you see your reflection. Do not let a wounded woman's fear dictate the rhythm of your healing. You are not broken. You are just beginning again, and the beauty in that beginning is this. You now know what you bring. You now know the power of your presence. You felt the ache of loving without being met, and from that ache, something sacred grows. Wisdom, patience, self-respect. You start to realize that real love isn't about convincing or performing or overgiving. It's about two people who can sit in silence, who can look at each other and say, "I see you," and truly mean it. You will meet her one day, not the echo of your past, not the storm chaser, but the woman who's done the work, who has sat with her shadows long enough to stop fearing the light. And she'll love your quiet not because it's easy, but because it's real. She'll see your emotional presence not as a burden, but as a gift. And she'll stay, not because she's afraid to leave, but because she finally understands what staying means. So until then, stay with yourself. Deeply, fully, proudly, because in a world of fleeting connections and shallow promises, a man who knows his worth is not just rare. He's unstoppable. So when she left, it wasn't the end. It was the unveiling. The slow, painful, necessary unveiling of who you are when no one else is looking, when the room is quiet, when the bed is cold, when the memories still echo, but the door has already closed. And in that space, you found something she never stayed long enough to see. You, not the version of you tailored to please, to chase, to fix, but the real you, the man who feels deeply but doesn't beg, who aches but doesn't fold, who loves fully yet knows when to let go. She may never understand what she walked away from, and that's okay, because her absence carved out a deeper presence in you, her good. By planted the seed of your rebirth. You are not here to convince someone to stay. You are not here to be the cure for wounds you didn't create. You are here to stand tall in your truth, to offer love from a place of strength, not scarcity. And the next time you give your heart, it won't be out of desperation. It will be from a place of wholeness. Because you've seen what happens when someone mistakes your peace for weakness, and you survived it. Now you know, now you're ready. Not to win someone over, but to walk beside someone who's done the work too. Someone who won't flinch at your stillness, who won't fear your gaze, who won't run when you offer real love without noise. So let her go, not with resentment, but with reverence, because her leaving was the fire that revealed your foundation. And what remained? Quiet, steady, whole. That's who you've always been, and that man doesn't chase chaos. He attracts peace, and this time he keeps it.